Hello, guys. Welcome back to another episode. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Dr. Perry Nickelston, also known as Stop Chasing Pain and known as the Lymph Doc on Instagram. Hello, Dr. Perry. Welcome to the show.
Hello, my friend. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to be here to talk with me about everything lymphatics. I mean, the lymphatic system is such an important topic, and I feel that so many people are not aware about it. And
Mhm.
maybe you can tap into your own personal journey, like what actually led you down the path of the lymphatic system, and what brought it to your awareness in the first place.
That's a great question. Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think, honestly, it's the most important, most neglected, and least known about systems of the body that we should be working to help ourselves recover from chronic pain, chronic inflammation, chronic disease, all of that. And I think in the coming years, the more research they do on it, they're going to discover the same thing. I know that because it did it for me, and it does it for the patients that come in to see me from all over the world, honestly, who've tried just about everything that you can think of from the what you might call traditional regular route to get better, and it didn't work. Or what happens more often is it works for a little bit, then it stops working, and then it keeps coming back and it comes back worse. So to me, what that means is we're looking in the wrong place. We're
Yeah.
not looking at the right thing. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't discover lymphatics because I had this big moment that came down and I'm like, aha, that's it. I mean, I would not have even looked at lymphatics
Yeah.
myself until I got really, really sick and I
Yeah.
got stuck in what I call the abyss or the quicksand of autoimmune disease and chronic pain. And I was in a bad spot. And nothing that I was doing myself from things that I had learned over my, at that time, probably 22-year career,
Mhm.
uh, were helping. And
Mhm.
then I said, all right, well, I'm not figuring it out. Let me go and talk to a lot of other people. But they weren't having any luck either. So I said, all right, there's something that all of us are clearly missing.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, all right, I just have to start thinking differently and looking at things I haven't looked at before. And it ended up being the lymphatic system. And I only found that honestly because somebody else told me about it, which is why I do what I do now, because maybe I'm going to be that for someone else who was lost like I was. I went to a workshop in London many, many years ago to study energy medicine because I was trying everything else. And I'm like, oh, let me just look at energy systems of the body. And they first system they started with and they put it up there were lymphatics. And I went, lymph? Lymph what? I didn't even think about it, right? But then the more they started to talk and the more they began to describe what things you can feel when it's not working, that I'm like, that's me. I think that's me. And the instructor said, yeah, that is you. I can spot it a mile away. And now I know how to teach people to do that too. And here's the thing. He started to like assess my lymphatic system, just pressing in different places to see if it's puffy, tender, swollen, painful. And this is the stuff, kind of stuff I teach people
Yeah.
now. And when I was pressing on those areas too in the past, but I wasn't thinking about I'm pressing here and I'm working lymphatics. I was trying to impact, fascia and muscle and tension. I wasn't visualizing what's underneath. And I really didn't have any order to where I was rubbing. I just wanted to rub where it hurts, which is kind of where stop chasing pain came from. You need to look beyond the pain. And every single one of those places that he touched hurt more than the last. I mean, it was awful. But I'll tell you what, within 3 days of being there at that workshop, I probably felt, I would roughly say 50% better than when I got there. And I hadn't felt that much of a change in 2, 3 years. And I'm like, whoa, okay, this is kind of a big deal here. And then from that moment on, that really became my meaning, if you will. My I knew it was my life purpose to pursue it, to finish helping myself heal as much as I could. And then I thought to myself, I got to tell everybody else on this too, because if I didn't know about it and I'm in the healthcare field, what's the chance that people that are not in the healthcare field know about it? And then here's what really blew my mind is just because you're in the healthcare field doesn't mean you know about it either. And I see that all the time. So now what I do is I tell people about lymphatics, why it's important, why it matters, and how to do something to make a change in it, because you can, that can move the needle of healing into a more positive direction. And when I started to teach these techniques, people said, Doc, I don't know what you did, but I'm definitely feeling better. And I'm like, that's it. So I like for people to kind of see what brought me to why I'm even discussing lymphatics, because I say this all the time, discovering that system, working that system changed my life. But I'll be honest with you, I think it saved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's truly inspiring your story, and thank you so much for sharing that. And, it always occurred to me as well that why is the lymphatic system, not talked about more, especially when I learned about your work like a long time ago, 5, 6 years ago, when Tina was going through her autoimmune issues. And that's how I came across your work. The funny thing was that I was following you due to a lot of things that you were discussing about movement on your page and in
Yep.
relation to pain and joints and so on, because I had a very big interest in that. And at the time, I was doing my nutrition degree in Scotland. But during the nutrition degree, you were able to influence my decisions to go and study, movement sciences, specializing in rehabilitation. So that was what I did for my master's degree, and that's what Tina did also as well. And while she was trying to overcome her autoimmune issues, and
Mm.
I dug into your page and I started to realize how much you were talking about the lymphatic system and how that has such a massive relationship, with pain. And could you elaborate to us what the lymphatic system actually is, and how can we visualize it?
Yeah, so that's I definitely will. So let me address a couple of things that you said there about why people don't really talk a lot about it. One, I honestly ask myself the same question every single day, but you don't know what you don't know. And
Yeah,
I didn't know about it either, so I really can't fault somebody else, because one of the primary reasons that people don't look at lymphatics is that they don't think they have a lymphatic system problem, because the two biggest things that show up where they mention lymphatics are definitely when you have cancer.
mm,
Okay, because the lymphatic system, one, its job is to kill cancer cells. That's its job, but it also transports different things throughout the body as well. So that's when they talk about, metastasis, things like that. So if
yeah,
you don't have cancer, you're not really thinking about lymph. And the other one is when you have a condition known as lymphedema. And
yeah,
lymphedema is where the lymphatics have damage to the actual valves that in the system that, one, you could be born with. That's called primary lymphedema. Secondary lymphedema occurs over time based on things that have happened to you in your life that just pushes the system too far and it, quote unquote, breaks or doesn't work well. Then it can't remove fluid. So body parts become abnormally, if not grotesquely, swollen. Like the legs are big ones, the arms, especially after women have had breast cancer or breast surgery or things like that, they usually get lymphedema. So if you don't have those two things, you're not thinking about it. And I wasn't either. But once you learn about the system, you realize that it is the primary component player of your immune system. That's kind of a big deal because your immune system keeps you from being dead, right? And your immune system is the one that is a player in inflammation and healing. So if your lymphatic system doesn't work that well, your immune system is automatically more compromised. So you're more prone to swelling, inflammation, disease, whatever one you want to name. Okay. So that's a big player. But honestly, I think even more important that they don't really look at, but I do, is it is a primary part of your vascular system, your blood flow system, because the two always dump into each other back and forth. So it's essentially one piping unit that's just called different names. And when you have a lymphatic system issue, you end up having a vascular circulation issue. And that is never, ever, ever going to work out well for you in the pain department. Something's going to hurt at some time. So if you just come across that, you got to say to yourself, wow, that's kind of a big deal. Yeah, it is, right? So what I'm trying to do is to have people note that your lymphatic system, because of those two primary roles, can make an influence on just about anything that you're suffering with at the moment in relationship to pain and inflammation. Okay? Because one of the things that we have, or I'm going to just say the word, autoimmune. First of all, autoimmune disease usually means they have no freaking idea why you got what you got. That's what that means.
Yeah.
It just sounds fancy. And then they come up with a brilliant strategy of your body is attacking itself. Yeah. No, not attacking yourself. It's not stupid, right? It's attacking something, right? So the lymphatic system, its job is to do a couple things. It gets rid of metabolic cellular waste that's inside of your body from cells that die naturally through aging. And they are there from trauma and injuries. And they put out waste products when you make new cells. Okay? That's the whole Krebs cycle, mitochondria, ATP. That makes energy, but it also makes waste. So all the dead cells, all the waste, and it gets rid of stuff that gets inside of you that's not supposed to be in there, like a bacteria, a virus, toxin, parasite, cancer cells, anything icky. I tell everybody, right? Those have got to get out because you don't want too many of those. I mean, you always have them because it's part of being a human being, but it's how much do you have? So it's the sewage system of your body. Now, let me ask you a question. What happens if that sewage system gets overwhelmed or backed up and then your toilets can't flush out the waste? Well, then the waste stays inside of you. And then the waste is not supposed to be in there. So it reaches a certain level. And then your immune system says, hey, we've got a lot of stuff that's not supposed to be in here. What are we going to do about it if it can't get out?
Yeah.
Then your immune system says, well, I'm going to step up and I'm going to do my job and I'm going to inflame it and I'm going to try to kill it.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. But here's what you have to keep in mind. What if it does kill it? Where's it going to go after you kill it? So you stack, and everything builds up and builds up and builds up. And that's the person who says, I'm doing a lot of these things and it's not helping and I get worse.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to change things on the front end when you can't even get stuff out through your toilets. And the lymphatic system has these nodes, the lymph nodes, and most people have heard of that. And those are like mini toilets, but they're also miniature scanners for your immune system.
Like checkpoints.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you go to the supermarket and you have a QV code, I forget what they call it, a code, and then you scan it across and say, okay, I'm buying bread or I'm buying eggs. So it knows what it is. Well, that's what your lymph nodes do. They scan it and then they say, okay, immune system, I detected this. Now send out this to kill that, is what it does. Okay?
Mhm.
So it's the alert one. So if you're clogged, you're always on alert. And everything can inflame you because your system is just like, dude, everything around you is just trying to take you out. So
Mhm.
you become hypersensitive to
Mhm.
everything. That's many people get hypersensitivity to foods, right? To stimulation, even to pain, where they get kind of pain everywhere that
Yeah.
ricochets all over the place. It's in my shoulder, it's in my hip, it's in my back, it's in my head, it's in my eyes. You
Yeah.
can't chase those body parts. There's no way in the world you're getting out of that by chasing the body parts,
Mhm.
right? So you need to clear that system out in order for it to, one, not just be that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that it's just on all the time. It's not broken or
Yeah.
attacking you. It's just it's doing what it needs to do to solve a problem because you took away part of its ability to actually function well.
Yeah.
So then now it has to make another decision, and it does this so you don't die. Like,
Yeah.
the ultimate goal of your body is not happiness, it's don't be dead. And I jokingly say to everybody is that your brain doesn't really care if you don't have pain and you feel good,
Yeah.
because if you feel those things, that means you're not dead.
Yeah.
So saving your life is number one. But I know there's always going to be some type of lymphatic system obstruction issue with any long term chronic disease, illness, pain. Now, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that's going on. And when you work it and you help it, which we'll go over how, it doesn't mean that it's magically going to change everything for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does. It did that for
Mm.
me, right? But what I will tell you, it's going to play some type of role in why you're stuck. And if it's there and it doesn't work well and you don't uh, help it, and you leave it obstructed, it's going to show up somewhere
Yeah.
down the line. Okay. So part of the thing is with the things that I teach people in the assessments is you check some areas just to see, is my lymphatic system maybe a problem or not? And if it is, you work it. If it's not, well, that's good, but at least you've checked it off and you've ruled it out as a problem.
Yeah.
But here's what I want people to understand. The lymphatic system is the number one system to remove swelling, edema, inflammation, and waste from the body. So if you're stuck with inflammation, edema, swelling, and pain, you go to the number one system first, because all the other systems are backup systems for that. You fix the top of the mountain one first, and then you work your way down. And that's one of the reasons that I wasn't getting any better, is because the lymphatic system is a really cool thing. Your lymphatic system gets rid of stuff. Right? But when everybody's trying to heal, they're always focused on what can I put in?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, like I need to get more oxygen in. I'm like, okay, well, guess what? That becomes waste. I need to put better food in. Perfect. I'd rather you eat good food than a ding dong and a yoo-hoo. You know what I mean? So, but guess what? Good food and bad food also become waste. I'm going to take 30 supplements because that's what people said that I need. Okay, great. What do supplements become?
Waste.
Waste. So then I'm going to ask you, what happens if you're already overburdened with waste?
You're gonna get stagnation.
Yeah, you're going to get worse, or you'll temporarily feel better, but it won't last because uh, the body is really smart. It's not going to let you put something into an area that it already can't get out. So just because you stick something in your mouth to swallow it and you breathe That's good, but I have news for you. That does not mean anything whatsoever at all that it's actually making its way to a cell. It doesn't mean that at all. So just because it goes in here doesn't mean everything should magically change. That's a good start, right? But you have to clean up the terrain that the cells live in, which is a liquid environment. They call it the milieu, which I love that word. It's such a great word, milieu. A fluid-filled environment. Because you're mostly water, right? Like your organs and your body are mostly water. Your lymphatics are 90, depends on the resource that you read, 90 to 95% water. That 5% is arbitrary. I just want you to know it's not like 5%. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So one of the things that causes lymphatic issues are dehydration.
Yeah.
So if you are dehydrated, your lymphatic system is taking a hit big time. And most people who have chronic pain and chronic inflammation are dehydrated. They just don't know that they're dehydrated.
Mhm.
Right? And here's the thing. Lymphatics are always trying to move. The operative word is trying. And everything pretty much moves lymphatics, but there's two big things that move it. Movement. Like moving yourself moves lymphatics. That makes a whole heap of common sense, right? Like, of course it does. So walking, which is the shirt you got on, which is great, is probably one of the most effective ways to move your lymphatics. You mix that with jumping up and down, rebounding on your calves, even better, okay? Because your calves are built-in rebounders. They'll move it, all types of movement. You pick it. Then the other one is diaphragmatic breathing, using the muscle underneath your lungs and above your organs.
Yeah.
So the way you can help that is close your mouth and breathe in and out through your nose. You'll automatically start to pump your lymph a little bit better. So I tell people, here's a novel idea. Walk with your mouth closed, which is not easy for people to do. And then jump up and down every now and then.
Yeah.
Right? But, and listen, I was doing a lot of movement-based rehabilitation, a ton of it, but it wasn't helping me get better from the inflammation that I had. It's good stuff, but it was a different path I needed to go down because that was no longer doing it.
Yeah.
Okay? So movement is great, but what happens if you're still stuck?
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, here's the kicker. Because people ask me this all the time, because it happened to me. Doc, I move all the time, man. I'm a movement ninja. I do all these different kind of techniques. I've been studying it for years. I'm a personal trainer. I do all sorts of breathing techniques. I've been to every breathing seminar you could think of. I've nailed it. Shouldn't my lymphatics be good? And why am I still not getting better? One of those two things. And then I tell people, it's like, because your lymphatics are probably too clogged and stagnated where breathing and movement alone are not enough. They're too stuck. So that's when I bring in the analogy, circling back, when I tell you that the lymph nodes are little mini toilets. So I said, let's think about a toilet in your house. If it gets backed up, right? And sometimes you can clear the block if you keep flushing it, right? And why does that clear? Because of the pressure, the sucking pressure. Right? But sometimes it doesn't go that well. And you keep flushing, and then what happens to the bowl? It raises up, and then it overflows, and then it goes everywhere. And then I ask people, well, what's your next step? How are you going to unclog it? And they say, well, I'm going to use a plunger, or I'm going to use a snake if it's a deep block. Exactly. And why do those work? Because it's changes in pressure and it's manual energy clearing it. That's what I was missing for me. So my lymph nodes and the clusters of lymph nodes. You have about 700 of them in your body, and they cluster all over, but there's big groups of them. And sometimes that big group gets stuck. And those groups live around the primary joints of your body that are supposed to move the most. How wonderful of a design is that?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. But sometimes they're too obstructed, and moving the arm, moving the shoulders and the hips, which is a location where they are, that's why walking is great, isn't enough. So then you got to get in there and you got to plunge it. That's where you do it by hand. So you manually release the blocks with your built-in plunger, your hand. Then you breathe. Then you move. Then you jump. And what I'm going to tell you is you're going to have a drastically different result when you do it, because you understand now what's trying to move, why it can't move, and how pressure works in the body in relationship to how fluids move. When you understand that, you finally say to yourself, "Oh my goodness, this all makes sense now." And then you say, "Can it really be? There's no way it can be that simple. There's no way." And
Yeah.
then I'm going to say, well, first of all, it can be. Whoever told you that? And usually, what we were talking about in the beginning of the show is people are overlooking a basic and the fundamental that seems so simple it's almost stupid, that it can't be that simple. But that's why they're called basics and fundamentals, because if you skip them, you are going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have like a foundation if you don't lay those things down, right? And so one thing I actually wanted to ask you was, how does one get themselves in that state in the first place, right? So we talked about we talked about the concept and what it is, and what it's doing, where it's going, and how to relieve the pressure and to let's say excrete things. So it's kind of like a twofold question. How does one get there in the first place? What things would actually contribute to that? I can assume that something to do with the modern living and lifestyle has a lot to do with it, and the
Yeah.
environmental toxins and pollutants and everything like this. But one awesome thing that you mentioned at the beginning was what the body does, like in pursuit to actually, keep us alive, is the inflammation. But one awesome thing I heard on another podcast is they said that the solution to pollution is dilution. And
Correct.
I'm aware that the lymphatic system, the one big reason why it basically swells us up, or we even get fat, or we start storing fat, even though we're not eating in excess, or even moving less, we are actually able to store fat due to the fact that the body's trying to protect itself, right? So it's basically putting it away somewhere safe, so it doesn't actually do damage to the organs where those toxins or pollutants are floating around in the system, or even close to the brain. So, like, yeah, could you tell us, what could actually contribute to like a stagnated and clogged lymphatic system? Because if you think about it, our ancestors maybe didn't need to necessarily work directly their lymph. Like, do you think that this is more like of a modern problem that we are seeing?
Great questions. And let's cycle back to them to make sure I get them all, because I really like that last one. Um, First of all, I want you to know that the lymphatics are supposed to swell. So when you get sick, you get a cold, you get a virus, the doctor
Yeah.
usually checks under your neck, right, for
Yeah.
swollen lymph nodes. Well, that means, why does it swell up? Because it's fighting something. Right? But they're not supposed to stay swollen. That's the point. Okay. So if you're fighting some kind of underlying infection you don't know that you have, which many people do, the lymphatic system can stay switched on that they've got. That's why many people with gut issues, gut inflammation, and leaky gut have swollen lymph
Mm,
nodes, because they're leaking stuff into the body that's not supposed to leak into the body, and the lymphatic system just stays on.
mm,
And interesting side note, most of the lymphatics are located in your gut. The reason being is that's where 70% of your immune system lives.
yeah.
So, but yeah, one of the reasons who's to say what their lymphatic system was like way back when? But it's not the same world now as it was when our ancestors were moving around. First of all, they moved like a lot. Like, you had to step out probably for 20, 25 miles a day to you keep moving and not dying and get food and transport your stuff from one place to another. You couldn't get Uber Eats to deliver your food with your finger, you know? And then first of all, if you want to call that food when you get it, what you put into your system will overtax the lymphatic system too, because what humans eat today is horrific.
Yeah.
And the only thing that your cells have to work with to make new cells are what you stick in your mouth. So you better choose wisely what you stick in your mouth. Crap food, crap cells. Pretty simple, right? So nutrition is great, but you also have to do the back end of the waste management. And part of it was they were out in the sun a lot and touching the ground more. So they call that grounding or earthing. And I'm sure they had stress, but it's not the same kind of stress. Or if it was a stress, it was like a surge of stress. But like, okay, all right, everybody, there's a tiger over there. We got to make sure that we kill it or move so we don't die. And then after you live, you probably chill with your tribe mates for a long period of time before you get another surge of cortisol. So it spiked. And not to mention, you had a smaller unit of people around you that were usually nicer than people are today, supportive to you. So you felt accepted. You felt part of a community, right? I'm talking, then now I want you to look at it, is that you got so much overload. Nobody's outside. There's artificial light. You can see your glasses on, right? You have maybe very few close people, or you jump on one of the most toxic things to come across this planet in the world, which is social media. And you come out the back end hating yourself and your life, or hating everybody else. Now, why am I telling you all of this? Because the internal part of your body is going to react to the stress levels in your life. Physical, mental, emotional, social, nutritional, all types like that. And stress puts you into what's called a fight or flight, sympathetic hyperarousal state, so you don't die. So your primal brain kicks in, right? That's the one who you kill the tiger and then you get away. But going into work, you get cut off by 5 people, that's 5 tigers. And then humans can't let the tiger go. So they stress about the damn cutoff all day long, right? So you're in a state of stress. This is really important. Stress automatically releases stress hormones in the body that are good temporarily, but over time they start to break the body down. They're catabolic. And when it breaks the body down, what does it make? You should say waste right by now. But sympathetic dominance, they call it, because it's on too much, causes vasospasm. It constricts vessels, blood flow vessels, lymph flow vessels. And when you constrict those vessels, guess what you do? You slow down flow.
Nutrition and oxygen to the cells.
Yeah. So your cells don't get what they need, and they can't get stuff out either. And then you start to break down. And then that sets the stage for fluid stagnation, fluid/backflow, where it actually goes the opposite direction. That's why you get swelling in your legs or your feet, or you get varicose veins and stuff like that, because stuff can't get out. So it can't go up, so it goes out. That makes sense? It extends out. So you've got stressors in life. You've got toxins in life from the horrific things that the governments tell you is okay for you to eat and put on your skin, and toxic relationships. And so that excess tension, like I said before, breaks the body down. Everything has a capacity to how much it can take, and eventually your body's going to be like, I'm done. Like I can't do this anymore on my own, and that usually will then signal you the signals of pain, which means I need you to change something quick, fast, and in a hurry. And then you're like, I don't know what to change. Well, first thing I'm going to tell you is work your lip. Start there. Okay. And the other one is you just don't know what you don't know. Right?
Yeah.
And it's neglect because nobody ever told you about it, or if they did, what to do about it. So I could do a comparison. Like, let's say nobody ever told you that you should go to the dentist a couple times a year, floss and brush your teeth. What if nobody ever told you that? Well, what do you think your teeth are going to look like after about a year or two? You're not probably going to have any teeth, but they're going to be pretty horrific. And you're going to be like, I don't understand. I mean, my teeth should be good, right? Well, it's the same thing with the lymphatics. I'm trying to say that you should floss your lymph. This is a kind of an analogy. Floss your lymphatics, brush your lymphatics, and even watch what you eat. For the teeth from like more sugary foods, better food, things like that. Because if you do, it doesn't mean that you might not get a cavity ever again, but your chances of getting one significantly go down. It's the same thing with the lymphatics or any other body part. So honestly, those are probably the biggest reasons. A few other ones are traumas to the body, physical traumas where you get what's called scar tissue or fibrosis from surgeries are a huge one, a big one. Lifestyle choices of your posture, because poor posture or getting into the same position for an extended period of time, the tissues of your body conform to lines of stress. So you may have certain areas where you have a lot more tension in it and less tension in another place. And all that fascial tension, what does that influence? How fluids move between and underneath the fascia. So you can be sending a lot of fluids to one place, but not a lot of fluids to another place. And then here's the kicker, either one can hurt you. So for me, when people say, Doc, what do you do? I mean, I've really thought about this for like a long period of time because there's really no elevator speech for what I do. Because I don't say chiropractor because I don't really do that so much anymore. And if I say that word, you already have a mental picture of what I'm going to do to you. And I'm going to say, you're 100% wrong, by the way. So first and foremost, if I had to pick two things, one is that I'm all about teaching you how to move the fluids in your body based on whatever you're choosing to do to your body. Understanding how fluids move. And then the second one for that is teaching you a different way of thinking. How to think about why your body is doing what it's doing. There's always a reason. It never does anything by accident, and it doesn't make goof ups. It's just picking strategies to solve problems. That's what it's doing. So all I'm trying to tell people is that if you can check off the lymphatics first and get that moving, everything else you're going to do afterwards will typically work better.
Yeah.
And I know that for two reasons. I see it all the time. And two, that's how physiology works.
Incredible. Yeah. So basically, like, let me reiterate what you just said. So you said that all of these things that contribute to lymphatic stagnation and blockage is basically an accumulation of stress in the system. And there are so many things that contribute to stress, and the body can't differentiate between physical stress and emotional stress. Basically, I like to look at it that the body has a bucket and like a stress bucket. And when you overflow that bucket, then you go into this state of fight and flight. And when we're in this state of fight and flight, our tissues of our body, like our muscles, which are like sponges, and our organs are basically become constricted, right? And when they're constricted, then we have less flow of everything, less flow of the blood and less flow of the lymphatic system. I'm sure that the nervous system gets deprived of oxygen and nutrition as well, which leads to, screaming basically, because as you say, that pain is a request for change, through many of your posts. And I love that quote because it tells you that, pain is not actually the problem necessarily, unless you have a direct physical injury on that specific location where you're feeling the pain. But most of the times, pain is something that is trying to get our attention, right? It's trying to tell us that, that we need to change something, or change what? Like changing our habits and our behaviors, because that's what actually got us there in the first place. And so, yeah, it's just so important, like to take, close attention to what we are doing in our lifestyle, because what you are saying is literally that every single aspect of our life is influencing our lymphatic system, and vice versa. Like the lymphatic system is influencing the entire health of our body, because it's a foundational part of our physiology, just as the cardiovascular system and the nervous system. And you mentioned something about, moving and breaking down. And that gave me, the thought about, how when you exercise, you obviously break, especially resistance training, hard resistance training, you actually break muscle down, right? So if a person is actually compromised with their lymphatic system, it's not flowing well, or is congested, isn't that going to further exacerbate their problem if they are doing resistance training? Would you, for example, recommend to this individual to not resistance train while they get their lymphatic system in, before they get it in check? Or would you still like be okay with them still continuing to exercise while they're, fixing or assisting their lymphatic system?
Great question and good thinking process. It really would depend on the individual, okay? Because everybody's going to have a different level of inflammation and a toxicity, if you will, in the body, your ability to handle the training. Because you have to remember that exercise is great, weight training is great, but it's also a stressor to the body.
Yeah.
But therapeutic, this is a really important phrase that people need to understand, is that therapeutic interventions that feel good are also stressors.
Yeah. Hormetic stress.
Yeah. So once your tolerance to stress goes down, it doesn't matter what the stressor is.
Yeah.
It can set you off. So one of the biggest causes of therapeutic failure and chronic pain and disease is people are getting too many things done to them that overwhelms the system, and it shuts down and doesn't change because you're pushing it too hard, or it pushes back on you harder to get you to stop. Right?
Yeah.
So you can't overwhelm it. I will tell people you are correct. So weight training, physical training will absolutely break down tissue cells and destroy them, which is what you're trying to do. You want to do that so you can actually make newer, bigger, stronger, healthier ones, so you can be hashtag beast mode monster. So yeah, you want to do that because it makes you a more resilient human. But if you already have inflammation, because training creates inflammation, that's why they tell you that you don't really grow at the gym. You grow when you recover from the gym. That's your rest and recovery phase, which is usually a small window for people because they're already overstressed and under recovered. They have a mixture of both. That's why people can overtrain quite easily in our world of sports and training, but I see it all the time, and I was guilty of it too. What I tell people is just try to open up your lymphatic channels before you train, so you can get your pipes opened up, get your training, and then clear your pipes after you're done training. So you do a before, and then you do it afterwards. So it'll prime you for movement, and then it'll help the stuff get out after you've done your movement.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah, it's super valuable. This is something that, once I learned your big six, which we
Big
will,
six.
I'm sure that
Right.
we'll get into. Like I do that like always in the morning time. The first thing when I wake up in the morning, I basically use the bathroom. I go outside on my balcony. I stare at the sunrise, and I work my big six, and I focus on my breathing, and I do all that good stuff because I acknowledge how good it makes me feel afterwards. It's truly incredible. And
Yeah.
what I witness, like, physical and mentally, is that I can see more clearly through my eyes, and I can feel that my neck moves better because naturally when I wake up in the morning, I am a little bit stiff. And I know you're gonna tell me that the lymphatics, it's a sign of lymphatic system stagnation, wake up feeling stiff. And I
Hmm.
acknowledge that my lifestyle, even though I try to take care as much as I can, I do acknowledge that I'm doing probably more damage than my body can repair. And
Right.
that's something that's just a phase in my life. I feel like, when we are hard phases, it goes like in waves. Some periods are easier than others, and other periods are more easy on our body. And I can definitely tell you for a fact that when I go on holiday or if I'm not working as much, I'm less stiff. But that's not because I'm working less. It's because I'm able to be in a more of a parasympathetic state. I'm able to get more deep restorative sleep. I'm able to be more focused with my circadian rhythms. So all of these things, like, they're all assisting me to be better. But yeah, I just noticed that, like, a massive difference in my mobility just by working on my lymphatic system, even without focusing on mobility exercises, which tells us a lot that actually the restriction that we feel in our tissues is, due to a stagnation in our fluids, really, and that our tissues are not getting what they need, the oxygen and the nutrition that they actually need. So it's actually making us more stiff. And this is something that I tell all of my clients, and I tell them all to follow you as well, because you've inspired my work so much. And this is something that I implement into my practice because I help
Mm.
people with lifestyle optimization, because I acknowledge that exercise and nutrition are only two pillars of health. We have so many other areas where we should address, like the lymphatic system, like what we are exposed to in our homes, environmental pollutants and toxins. Again, what you said about, it's not so much about what you put in, but more about what you remove from your life. So many times I tell people, instead of asking me what kind of vegetables you should be eating, it's more like what kind of stuff should you be actually removing from your life to decrease your overall stress and your load on your system, so that your lymphatic system can get a bit of a break. Because the reason why it's all puffed and inflamed is because we're overwhelming it through our lifestyle habits and behaviors. And yes, our modern living is contributing to this. This is why it's more important than ever for us to educate on this and to make people actually aware about the lymphatic system. So could you tell everyone, like, how can someone go about, approaching the lymphatic system on their body? Like, where would be like the six main areas that you talk about, and why is the order that you do them in so important?
Yeah. First of all, I love everything that you said, and I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Appreciate it.
Um, yeah. So just being aware of the lymphatic system and its important is the very first step towards being able to actually change it. Because you can't control something until you become aware of it. We teach that with breathing all the time. And you're always breathing, but until you're like, well, I'm over breathing or I'm not breathing, or then you can change it. Same thing with the lymphatics. The big six is something I introduced years ago to hit the main areas of the body that have the most lymph node toilets to get tightness and tension and restriction. But you have to remember that it's also an area where you get big restriction of blood flow as well, and nerves get trapped and nerves get really upset in those regions with tightness and tension, and they get pulled on, and they can send signals that can turn into pain. Okay? And you also have to remember that I love movement for joints, but joints also need blood flow. Bones have blood flow, and there's lymph actually in bone, which they didn't think used to be there, but lo and behold, they just found it. All right. Which makes sense to me because I'm sure it's everywhere. Right. So I'll show you the 6 places, but this is where I'm going to cycle back on what I mentioned earlier in the show that I was trying to help myself just by kind of like rubbing anywhere on the body when I had tightness or tension or pain, just to ease the tension. And you also have to remember that muscles don't tighten up for no reason. They usually guard to protect you. And one of the things that they're guarding is when you have poor blood flow and lymph flow around it, it's going to stiffen up, right? And poor blood flow and poor lymph flow can also cause it to be stiff. So it's both, goes both ways. So I was like, I'm not having any results by rubbing, and then I said, oh, I have to figure out where I'm going to rub first, second, third, fourth, based on how fluids move underneath where you rub. That makes sense. It's like holy cow, that makes total sense. And then you have to understand, well, where are fluids trying to go in the body? So that's when I started to study physics. Open up my physics book and I studied fluid flow physics called hydrodynamics, or get into what's called biophysics. And when you look at the properties of fluids, particularly the ones that we're going to talk about with the waste ones, the lymphatics and veins, fluid is always going to travel from where there's a lot of fluid and a lot of high pressure to where there's less fluid and lower pressure, right? So it's naturally going to flow towards low pressure. The easiest way you can see an example of that is if you have a man-made water dam and you have all the water on one side and you have very little water on the other side. If I open up the dam, the doors, the water naturally goes to the low side. Okay. Hey, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so that's where it wants to go. It does it all on its own. So then I read by studying physiology that the lowest pressure of vein flow and lymph flow is your collarbone. So everything in your body is trying to go to that single point. And if that's the lowest pressure, then think logically, where would the highest pressure locations be? The furthest away from the collarbone.
Yeah.
Your feet, your hands, and your brain. So when stuff can't get out into the collarbone, it's going to backflow and keeps higher pressure in those areas. That's why you get swelling in your feet so easily. You get swelling in your hands, and you can get what's called neuroinflammation in the brain, right? Yeah. So what that means is that you have to clear fluids from low pressure out to high pressure. So you have to start from the collarbone and work your way out. You do not start in the hands and the feet and work your way in. Okay? So that's what everybody does. Everybody just starts rubbing arms and legs and backs, but they're not opening up the main drain point.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to have a lot of excess tension and tightness and restriction and poor flow at your collarbone, because you just see it all the time for how humans live. You know, it's going to be there. Trust me. So you have to clear the collarbone first and spend a lot of time there, above it and below it. And I actually have a video on my YouTube channel called Stop Chasing Pain on YouTube. If you go check it out there's a lot of them have gone viral, but there's a video showing you how to open up this inlet a lot. And if you just do that, everything else in the body will start to flow better. Why? Because I opened up the biggest block, and now everything in your arm and your legs can move up there easier, all on their own. And so you do, that's spot number one of the big six. So you do one. Spot number two is in the neck. It's just a little higher up. It's on the side of the neck behind the angle of the jaw, just in front of the lobe, below and in front of the lobe of your ear. That's the largest lymph node in the neck. So if you open spot two right there, you just open up the biggest pathways that drain the inflammation from your brain. Right? Now, number three is your shoulder joint, or your pectoral muscle, as they call it, axillary. That's an area that takes a big hit because that's where you hit a lot with women who have the breast cancer, lymphedema, things like that.
Yeah.
And why would it be there? Well, you're supposed to move your shoulder like a lot. The shoulder joint will pump that. And most people don't really move their shoulders a lot. They sit all day, they slump and look at a phone for hours on end, and they're really tight. So you do three.
Can I intervene real quick?
Yeah.
You know how you're mentioning about the shoulder area, you know, many women like now are told to wear more loose bras or no bras at all, because when you are restricting, when you have something that's basically compressing you, like, you know, on the outside all the time, it's basically not allowing those fluids to move, right? Even on top of stagnated lymphatics, you have something there which is obstructing the flow further down, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. You got it. And so that's spot number three. And spot number three is trying to drain towards spot number one, which you already opened up. Spot number four is your entire belly, from below your rib cage all the way to your navel, the whole thing. Like, spend a lot of time in there because that's where most of your lymph is located. Because 4 in your belly is trying to go to the collarbone. 5 is the crease of the groin around the hip joint, groin crease. And that's the primary route of blood flow to your foot. And then spot number 6 is behind your knee joint. And your knee is also trying to go to your collarbone. But what happens if you sit all day? What do you do with all those joints? You bend them and you flex them and you close them off.
Yep.
So you choke the knee, you choke the groin, you choke the abdomen because you're slouching and you're slooping down, and you're slumping. So you choke off 3, and then you choke off 2 because your head's probably sitting really far forward over your shoulders, rounded upper back, and you're breathing through your mouth, not your nose. Every single damn one of those pumps are shut down a little bit. And if you do that, breath after breath, 20,000 breaths a day after day, week after week, year after year, here's what's going to happen. Yesterday, you didn't have something, and then today, all of a sudden, you do. And you don't know why.
Yeah.
What the hell happened? Yesterday, I was great. No, you think you were great. You just didn't hit the breaking point yet. That's why chronic disease is so hard to treat, because, you know, acute injuries are medicine is really good at trauma. Like, if I stab you and break your leg, well, that A equals B. All right, I'm going to sew you up, stop the bleeder, put your leg back together. They're really good at that stuff. But they're not so good at these autoimmune diseases where there's a lot of different factors going into it, and I can't just blame a knife. I have to look at a bigger picture. Okay. And so if you open up all 6 of those areas, everything in the body, from all body parts, from the back, from your pinky toe to your finger, to your eyeball, to your brain, to your spleen, everything is going to start to flow a little bit easier because I just eased up those drains. So then I ask you, why in the hell wouldn't you want to do that every single day? And if you do,
Exactly.
if you stay with that on a regular basis for like 30 days, you're welcome, because you're going to notice a difference. But you have to be careful.
Absolutely.
Here. Okay, you have to be careful here. It's deceptively simple. It actually looks silly and ridiculous from the outside when I tell you, when you watch the Big Six, come on, Perry, you're telling me to rub and slap these six places. What is it doing? Well, I just told you what it's doing. It's moving all those restrictions in order. And when you free
Yeah.
stuff up that's been stagnated in you for years, if not decades, that's going to unleash a lot of response from your immune system. So you can initially feel worse. You may
Yeah.
feel really crappy, man. You're like, Doc, I'm supposed to do this and feel better, and I feel awful.
Yeah.
That's okay, because it's better out than in, but that's part of the healing process. And you may actually have pain get a little bit temporarily worse too, because the nervous system and the immune system work together. You just have to stick
Yeah.
with it and remember two things. Make sure you hydrate a lot. Please make sure you drink water, because you're going to detox hard if you don't drink water. And two, if you have that kind of response, do not attempt to do the Big Six again until you start to feel a little bit better than you did the day before. Okay? Because
Mm.
you'll overwhelm your system and you'll cause more stress. You have to let your body recover. It's like going to the gym and you're really sore the next day and like you can't move. Not a good idea to go back to the gym.
Yeah.
Same thing with this. Stick with it, right? And then you can start to feel better. Another caveat
Mhm.
is Big Six is just step one. That's the
Yeah.
beginner basics.
Mhm.
Sometimes stuff is deeper and has been there for a longer period of time. That takes more advanced techniques that we teach. I do not teach those just based on a quick video on YouTube, because you got to know what you're doing big time
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
venture into that. But I at least want you to start to move the needle a bit.
Yeah.
And
Oh
you
my
can
God,
see that anywhere. Big Six is everywhere. I mean, just type it in and you'll see it.
I mean, even just like, I mean, the Big Six has been absolutely life changing for me and for my partner Tina. So I'm pretty sure that for many, many individuals, they're going to find so much value, by doing this. And that like that I've noticed as well by doing it is that like I can breathe better as well. Like my nostrils feel more open. I don't know if it helps with the nitric oxide production, but anyway, it feels as if there is more drainage of the sinuses, right? So it feels as if like something is running down my throat. So I
Yeah.
definitely know that something is working when I start working my lymphatics. It doesn't always feel like it's running down the throat. It mainly feels like that if I'm feeling like, I can actually feel like my face is more poofy than normal.
Yeah.
Then I notice that it's like more running down the throat. But I know for a fact that it actually works. And for people who are actually skeptical, they need to actually understand that the body is so much more like subtle than we think. And this is like the power of how thoughts and words can influence our physiology as well, right? So how, one thing which I learned when Tina was going through her autoimmune struggles, I'm no manual physiotherapist, but I tried some techniques on her, and I was reading some books, and I was reading about the vagus nerve and
Mm-hmm.
learning about the vagus nerve. And it's really awesome how you mentioned about this lymph node below the ear, because if we rub right there, we're also stimulating our parasympathetic nervous system, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it's
when you
basically,
do spot one, because the vagus nerve travels through the collarbone region, it
yeah,
goes down, wrapping around your esophagus, and it
yeah,
exits around your stomach and goes to your gut. So when you do spot four, but when you do spot one, when you do spot two, when you do spot four, you just did your vagus at the same time.
yeah. That's amazing, and that just basically puts our body in a state where it's able to accept like what we are doing. And this is something that I learned from you a long time ago as well, that you need to get your body first in a state of feeling safe. And this is why it's so important that before a person is going to do any kind of treatment, if they're trying to like help themselves out for whatever reason they're trying to heal from or get out of pain, that we actually need to create a safe space, like an environment where it's able to all the things are supportive towards taking our body towards basically a parasympathetic state, because now in our modern world, we rarely need to be in a fight and flight state, running away from a tiger, but there is of course the imaginary tiger, which keeps us in this chronic low grade stress, which is actually what kills us, because it goes under the radar, but it's there all the time, and it's keeping our heart rate variability low as well, and everything is basically staying in this tightened and stiffened up state. So back to what I was saying about the touch, was that I noticed that when I was more subtle on the body, I noticed that we would have way better results than going hard. Of
Yeah.
course, there is, I believe, time and place to go hard, just like anything has its time and place. It's all context dependent. But I just noticed that for individuals who their nervous system is, very easily thrown into sympathetic overdrive, it's just so much better to be more subtle. And this is, I'm just trying to explain to everybody who has doubt, that we can influence the lymphatic system from the outside, that, even just a subtle touch can have such a profound, impact on our body and our nervous system.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's something that took me 20 years to figure out. 'Cause I used to be a really go hard, go intense, pain as weak as leaving the body, and trying to break up the scar tissue, pushing in to make them scream on my table, because it's more valuable if they feel it, and oh, that hurts so good, whatever. But I noticed that it didn't make a long-term shift. It was all temporary, because I was just feeding the sympathetic monster. And so when I started to go lighter, I got much better results from things, because I mean, they're already wound up like crazy when they're in constant pain and inflammation. So I'm just winding them up even more. And I just realized, well, I got to change something. So let me do that. And they started to feel better, So most people are stuck in fight or flight. Yeah, the sympathetic dominance. It's just part of the world that we live in. I mean, you can think yourself into fight or flight, which happens all the time. Right? The rat wheel won't stop. But here's what you also need to understand. When your lymphatics are stagnated and you have poor blood flow, you have inflammation in the body, and that can also feed the stress response from inside. So many people have the sympathetic stress response just because there's so much trapped inflammation inside that, I call it feeding the baby dragon. Jordan Peterson says that. Everybody has a small little baby dragon that you don't pay attention to, then it becomes a big giant one. So so it's both. So you need to watch your control of your sympathetics. But if you help your lymphatics, you make that easier, because you're helping yourself from inside out and outside in. And here's another thing. When you have so much inflammation in the body, it impacts how well your brain functions. Because your brain is surrounded by inflammation. So then it's really hard for you to think and change and create new patterns. Why? Because it takes more energy to create a new pattern than to continue doing an old one. So if you already don't have enough energy, there's no way your body's going to let you change something, because it doesn't have enough energy to keep doing what it's doing. It's just holding on to basic, old, reliable, default programs that are, they probably served you at one time because you're not dead. That's a pretty good sign. But they may not be serving you anymore now. So you'll everything in your life can change when you do lymphatics. And that's the part that drives me bananas in healthcare, is that everybody isolates specialties and systems. Like, I have somebody who's a pain doctor. The hell does that mean? Right? I have a gastroenterologist. I have a pulmonologist. Right? to have an ophthalmologist. So they look at body parts, but the body doesn't work like that. The parts always talk to each
Yeah.
other. And then I have people who look at the brain and brain health, but they don't know anything about the role the lymphatic system plays and
Yeah.
how the health of the lower body can affect the brain and how the brain can affect the lower body. It's both. It's almost just like they stop remembering anything from the collarbone down when they start to look at the brain. And then I have people who chase pain in body parts all the time. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people pain in both legs, in the feet. Everybody's chasing the feet 500 different ways. And all I do is I go up and I clear the lymphatics and I improve the brain blood flow to and from your brain.
Yeah.
And then people say, my feet don't hurt anymore. And I'm like, yeah, why might that be? Because the pain signals come from the brain, not the foot. So if your brain has a lot of inflammation in there and it has poor blood flow, hang on to this one. This is a melt your brain moment. You lose the ability to inhibit pain well. So you can chase your body parts all damn day and you're going to be in the quicksand. The more you do, the faster you sink. That's why you have to stop, breathe, look around, think differently, and grab onto a branch. I'm telling you right now, the lymphatics are going to be your branch.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, because actually that was one of my questions, that how does like the nervous system, influence the lymphatic system, and how does the lymph actually influence the nervous system state? So you basically just answered that for me. So that's awesome, because yeah, exactly as you mentioned, that actually it's the brain that's actually sending those signals. So if our brain is feeling like it's under threat, and you said that it actually cannot turn off the pain signals. So are you actually saying that pain signals are just pretty much electrical impulses to get our attention? They're not actually pain, but we are perceiving them as pain in a certain tissue of the body.
Yeah. So pain is a complex, you know, thing to go after, but basically pain is in the brain, not the tissues. Okay. So sensations, information, data is what it is, comes into the brain, and then the brain can interpret that many different ways.
Mm.
It can amplify the signals and then you get pain, or it can downgrade, inhibit the signals so you get less pain or no pain. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why pain is variable. What may hurt you won't bother me. Right? Or stuff doesn't hurt if you're in a state of fight or flight compared to if you aren't. Like how many people get shot in the battlefield, they don't know they're shot until they stop. Right? So your brain can inhibit the signals that are coming in and downgrade it going out so it doesn't hurt. So pain doesn't live in one area of the brain. It's everything. Okay. And it even gets more complex when you realize that if you tell yourself a different story about the stimulus, it can cause pain or not cause pain based on the story that you're telling yourself. If you think something's going to hurt, it's probably going to hurt. If you think it's not going to hurt, it might not hurt. It might hurt a lot less. Right. So what I want to know, that pain is in the brain, but what I want people to know of, it's very difficult to have your brain control pain when there's a lot of inflammation in the brain. So if you can begin to decrease inflammation in the brain, and then you're going to say, how in the world can I do that, doc? And I'm going to tell you, big six. That's the start. Okay. Because, well, I already told you before, where does inflammation go in the body? And that's when you say lymphatics. Right?
awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, you said that how the way that you perceive the pain, so then the way that you think about things and the way that you speak, because I've seen through your page that you mentioned a lot how you speak about yourself can really influence your outcomes, right? Of course, in a positive or a negative way, right? Because it's just all the word doesn't mean anything, but it's more about the intention behind or the emotion behind the word, right? So basically, if you are speaking negatively about yourself, you're right. And if you speak positively about yourself, you're also right. And it just basically, it's just that when you speak negatively about yourself, it's for sure going to have like an impact on you, because we've all witnessed that time where, we repeat something over and over and over that we don't necessarily have, but we are actually embodying that negative thing. But then when it comes to positivity, we don't, for some reason, we don't think about it the same way. Do you think that's because our brain is wired towards survival and it's aimed to look more at negativity rather than the positive?
Yes, right. Your primal survival instincts will always win out, especially if your brain is inflamed, because you lose the ability to use the cognitive reasoning process, which is innately human, to help you control your emotions. And so, the survival one kicks on in, and you do stuff that's just pre-programmed that's there. So that's what this front part is for, is to inhibit you doing stupid stuff,
Yeah.
right? And when you have such inflammation in there, it doesn't work as well. That's why you become much more emotional for
Yeah.
things. Right?
So basically, what you're saying is that if you are a healthier human being, you can actually also be, a better person as well. I mean, I can say that, like for myself, for a fact that because when I'm maybe sometimes, I mean, I'm very rarely unwell, but if let's say something happens or I'm not feeling so good, I can I can't be as good to others as I want to be. And that may be due to the fact that, as you mentioned, that I've got inflammation in the body, but also the fact that my cells just lack the energy, right? Like all the energy is going towards trying to heal my body, trying to repair my body, or for my immune system to fight whatever it's needing to do. So my body is always like working for me and not against me, as you mentioned. And it's never like, trying to cause us harm, but it's only just trying to work for us. So we just need to be able to support and assist it and trying to be as healthy as we can, because this way we can be better human beings for ourselves, first of all, to be able to
Hmm.
think and be more aware about our actions and our behaviors and our thoughts, and then that can reflect outwards, in our family and then on a societal level. So something that I wanted to ask you, actually, something very important, because I know that you love lasers, and I'm also a very big fan of red light therapy, and also a very big fan of circadian rhythms. So could you tell us how circadian rhythms and light and sleep and all of these factors together, how do they actually influence the lymphatic system? Like, why is circadian rhythms important for the lymphatic system?
Circadian rhythms are important because that's just your sleep cycle, right? Uh, for me, the most important reason is that your brain cleans its toxins at night when you sleep. So you need to have a sleep cycle to actually be able to sleep and not have interrupted sleep. So your brain can heal itself well. So if you're not sleeping well, or you have trouble sleeping, or you're switching it around a lot, that's catastrophic to the waste management cleaning system of the body. And that will usually end up with issues everywhere because of the neural inflammation. And light is, I've been using light for 20 years because, light is life. If you want the best light, I mean, step outside, but how many people are actually outside and they don't get sunlight on all their body parts because they're usually wearing clothes or sunglasses or sunscreen, which defeats the whole damn purpose in the first place. So you can use the light therapies that are around, becoming more popular now, which is great to
Yeah.
see, which I've known for 20 years. And
Mhm.
you place it over the different areas of your body. You can even place them over spot number 1 at the collarbone, which is a big place to put it. And the cells of your body are designed to react to light. Special photoreceptors on them that take in light. If you don't think light's important, lock yourself in a dark room for a little while, see how well you turn out, right? So also the reason I like light is because it's energy. So it's going to help energize your mitochondria. But it also can help with vasodilation, opens up flow. So it makes pipes bigger. And I want bigger pipes. If you don't have big enough pipes, stuff can't get anywhere. Like that's so fundamental, it's not even funny, right? So it's the breakdown slowly over time that takes people out. I had a doctor that I learned from a long time ago, and he always asked his patients this question, like, why now? Why today? Why not last year? Like, why did you not have this pain then? What changed? One could just be tolerance and time and the system broke, or you had one thing that sent you over the edge. No, and it usually some type of emotional component does it. The threshold breaks. But here's what you need to know. What was the state of your system before you got the final blow? Like the state of your lymphatic system and your blood system before you have surgery or trauma will determine how well you recover from your surgery and your trauma. Yeah. And just because you haven't had pain up until your surgery doesn't mean those systems have been working well at all. Doesn't mean that at all. So either way, here's how easy it is. You just do the big 6 before your surgery and after your surgery. Right?
That's simple. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Perry, for taking the time out of your day to talk with me, and I'm very, very grateful to have you on. And please tell everyone where people can find you and get in touch with you, and even have consultations or find your workshops.
Yes, thank you very much. It was a really great time. I can't believe how fast it went. I think we hit what they might call the matrix flow state, where time is relative, right? It's very easy to find my work. I've been doing this stuff a long time, and there's stuff for everyone of all different levels, from everyday people who just want to get better to professional. It's all on there, and that's Stop Chasing Pain. Just type in Stop Chasing Pain on any search engine, and I'll show up. A lot of different things you can look at, and we do have courses available all the time. Membership site. I have my own podcast, Stop Chasing Pain, that I've had for about 15 years. A lot of time on Instagram and YouTube, I think, primarily, the ones I enjoy the most. So check that out for some free content. That'll keep you busy for a while. And we do see patients in person in my not my pain clinic, but my clinic in New Jersey, outside of New York City. It's called Saddle River, New Jersey. And we do online ones as well, as much as we can to help people from a distance. You can get all that information on stopchasingpain.com too. So thank you.